You know how people love to say weddings bring out the best in families? Spoiler. Mine missed the memo. Picture this: crystal chandeliers, a jazz trio crooning something classy, and me, Isla James, heritage architect and accidental bride, catching my reflection in a brass panel I'd restored myself. Quick flash of pride, touch of lipstick, then movement in the mirror that wasn't mine. She was right behind me. Celeste, my brand new mother-in-law. Designer gown, predatory perfume. The collector, because she collects enemies and calls them family. I watched through the shine of my own handiwork as she uncapped a tiny vial. 3 slick drops slid into my champagne. Clear, odorless, conviction in liquid form. I didn't gasp, didn't flinch. Panic never saved a cathedral or a bride. I waited, counted the seconds until she floated off to charm a judge near the cake table. Then, steady as a surveyor drawing a line, I swapped our glasses. Her toast of doom was officially hers. When you restore ruins for a living, you learn patience. Sometimes you don't bulldoze a weak structure, you just let gravity do the paperwork. Most brides would have dashed to the loo for a meltdown. Me? I adjusted my veil, exhaled once, and walked back to the head table. The click of my heels matched my heartbeat, calm as algebra under pressure. Celeste beamed from across the room, thinking her little project was right on schedule. She'd been managing the Remove Isla campaign for 2 years, sabotaging florists, cancelling deposits, whispering that I only loved her son's bank account. Maybe she actually believed she was protecting her dynasty. Maybe control was her religion. Either way, she'd mistaken quiet for weakness. Oh, bless her heart. As I sat beside my husband, the band struck up another swing number. Crystal glasses clinked. Celeste's laugh sliced through the room, high and glittering. She raised her champagne, the one now carrying the weight of her own scheme. I smiled back, all teeth and secrets, because that glass wasn't the only thing I'd pre-planned. What Celeste didn't know, I'd been reinforcing this marriage and this ballroom with some very deliberate architectural upgrades. The first hairline crack in her empire was seconds away from showing. What Celeste didn't know, I'd been reinforcing this marriage and this ballroom with deliberate architectural upgrades. See, architects don't start building without stress tests. I didn't start this wedding without my own. Months before the vows, the Celeste problem had become my side project. While other brides obsessed over florals and playlists, I was charting contingencies like a structural engineer before an earthquake. Because the first hint that gravity was about to do its thing came long before champagne touched lips. Flashback, engagement dinner, candlelight, crystal, an audience that smelled like money and fear. Celeste leaned in with that icy smile and said, "Darling, authenticity is adorable, but maybe try not to mention work boots when you meet donors." Translation: hide your life, blend into ours. I smiled right back. Sure, if you try not to mention tax shelters. The table froze. She blinked. Score. 1-0 me. From then on, it was psychological Jenga. She'd pull out my base pieces, slowly cancel a meeting I'd scheduled, forget to send guest lists, quietly rename vendors. But you can't manipulate someone who literally rebuilds ruins for a living. I documented everything. Every email, every invoice, every tiny sabotage captured like cracks in brickwork. So when I said I reinforced the ballroom, I meant that literally. The security system, installed by my crew. Cameras? Discreet 4K and angled perfectly at the bar. If she tried something public, I'd have proof in lightning speed. That's not paranoia. That's preventive maintenance, baby. Back to the reception. Her laughter ricocheted through the hall as she floated between guests, clinking her glass, the same one that was now her own trap. The band slid into blue skies. Ethan, my husband, kissed my temple. Ready for your dance, love? Oh, the irony. We swayed under fairy lights, and I felt the tiniest tremor in the air. That pre-collapse tension an engineer senses through the soles of her boots, even in heels. Across the dance floor, Celeste's manicured fingers lifted her glass for another theatrical sip. She never could resist the spotlight. Inside my head, I counted beats instead of steps. 1, 2. Not of music of time. Because somewhere between sip 1 and sip 3, her perfect foundation was going to shift. In 45 seconds, the queen of composure would start to crumble, and every camera in this gilded cage would capture her collapse. 45 seconds. That's the time between a smug toast and structural failure, whether it's a cathedral dome or a dynasty. The jazz band kept crooning Blue Skies. Cameras blinked their tiny red dots like heartbeat monitors. My heels brushed the parquet in rhythm with Ethan's step, slow, steady, almost romantic. If anyone looked at us then, they saw calm perfection. If they looked past us, they saw Celeste lifting her glass again. A gleam from one hidden camera flickered across the rim of flash, so quick it could have been a photographer's bulb. She paused, blinked at the light like it had offended her, then carried on drinking. Confidence, always her favorite toxin. Somewhere near the dessert table, a waiter laughed too loudly. Someone dropped a spoon. Beat 1. Beat 2. For a second, the world sounded like it was inhaling. Celeste set her glass down, lips red as commandment. She turned toward our table, voice slicing through blue skies like sheet metal. Marriage, she began, is knowing where you belong and who keeps you there. Guests half clapped at her impromptu speech, unaware it was choreographed cruelty. Ethan smiled politely. I counted. 38 seconds. On belong, her throat hitched. A small, involuntary gasp disguised as a laugh. I saw a tremor ripple through her hand. The tiniest fracture in marble. No one else noticed. 30 seconds. She tried again. Trust it's about... The words snagged, tone warbling. The room hushed. Then came the groan, the sound I know too well from failing beans. Deep, human, involuntary. Celeste? Ethan murmured, already a doctor assessing symptoms. 20 seconds. Her complexion drained from champagne glow to wet plaster. She clutched the tablecloth, eyes darting, foundation cracking literally and metaphorically. The champagne flute toppled, gold liquid spilling like confession. 10 seconds. Mum? Ethan's voice rose. Chairs scraped. Music halted mid-bar. Celeste staggered backward. The lily went flying. The curated perfection she worshipped fell in slow motion, the kind of moment an engineer calls inevitable. And then gravity finished its paperwork. She collapsed, the ballroom erupting into shrieks and scrambled designer heels. But I didn't move, not yet. Control is built from timing. While others rushed forward, I let a single second stretch, absorbing the image, the empire's matriarch lying in the ruins of her own toast. Then I exhaled, stepped forward, and started directing chaos like a foreman on site. This was never just about revenge. It was about proof. Because in 20 more seconds, the footage rolling behind that bar would turn a medical emergency into a felony. And Celeste's foundation? About to be inspected. When a building finally falls, engineers don't cheer, they record. Then they trace every fracture to see what really gave way. That's exactly what we were doing, only our ruin was wearing diamonds. The ballroom smelled of lilac and panic. Guests formed messy clusters. Heels abandoned. Napkins pressed to pale faces. Ethan knelt beside Celeste, defaulting to clinical. Pulse, airway, reflex. The same hands that had stitched toddlers back together now hovered, useless, over the woman who'd tried to dismantle us. For a split second, watching her there, something tiny cracked inside me. A flicker of guilt that rose uninvited before I stamped it flat. Justice and pity don't share the same footing. My heartbeat tapped a counter rhythm still human after all. I crouched, fingers trembling just enough to prove it, and murmured, "Get the paramedics, love. She's breathing." The tone sat somewhere between care and command. Even I couldn't tell which. Behind the bar, the small red camera light pulsed steadily, feeding footage to an off-site archive Celeste could never touch. Preventive maintenance, nothing personal except it was. Paramedics arrived, efficiency wrapped in neon. Celeste was semi-conscious, broken syllables slipping from her mouth, tasting like curses. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, her beaded clutch snapped open, spilling its contents. Lipstick, compact, and one empty glass vial. Blueprints unrolled in public. Ethan froze. His mother's hand, the one that once guided scalpels steady as faith shook against the sheet. Recognition hit him like free fall. "Ethan," I said softly. I didn't hand him the vial. I let him collect it himself, build his own conclusion from the wreckage. Later, hospital corridors buzzed with fluorescent hum and bad coffee. Celeste stabilized. Law replaced etiquette. Officer row grey suit. Patients thinning took our statements. I delivered timestamps, not vengeance. My phone showed the clip. 2:47 p.m. Celeste. Vial, 3 drops. Proof as clean as glass. Ethan watched once. Silence. Then a breath that sounded like scaffolding giving way. "Send it to my father too," he said, voice emptied. "He needs to see what loyalty built." Rowe nodded, already logging evidence. A janitor's mop whispered past, washing away champagne and myth alike. As the footage transferred to the official archive, I looked at Ethan, the man who now saw everything. My pulse steadied. The structural stress dispersed. Maybe that flick of guilt was just the shock settling. Celeste's empire hadn't simply cracked. It had shifted the ground beneath every sterling alive. When the dust settled, we still had to decide which walls to rebuild, and which deserved to stay in rubble. From above, the sterling skyline looked unchanged. Below, the foundations quivered. In the year after the wedding, time crawled in layers of paint coats and therapy sessions. The slow arithmetic of healing. I learned quickly that reconstruction runs on patience. Gravity destroys fast. Rebuilding demands deliberate math. 2 weeks after the trial, Ethan and I left the estate for a narrow brick house on the far bank of the river. Solid bones. Peeling paint. Hope under scaffolding. Every weekend smelled of sawdust and takeaway curry. I stripped wallpaper. Ethan learned power tools, still holding a drill like a scalpel. Bless him. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we let silence measure progress. We didn't speak Celeste's name. Her absence had sound of its own. But trauma is wiry stuff. It hides inside beams. Some nights I woke to the glass quivering in its frame, and swore I heard a spoon drop. A room gasp. My pulse would miscount beats until I felt Ethan's fingers find mine. Morning always arrived anyway, carrying the stubborn rhythm of normal life. 3 months in, I broke a ceramic bowl, the first thing that made our half-painted kitchen look like home. Instinct said to bin it. Training said to repair. I mixed lacquer with powdered gold, tracing fractures until they gleamed. Kintsugi Japanese for gold joinery. The beauty of damage honored, not hidden. When I showed Ethan, he smiled, weary but genuine. "You could charge admission for that philosophy," he said. I laughed. Restoration was never about perfection. Sometimes I wonder if Celeste will ever grasp that. She's 2 hours away in a minimum security facility, living with blank walls she can't remodel. Maybe that's Grace, the quiet kind that keeps her still. Last month she mailed Ethan a letter. He read it once, folded it twice, placed it by the fire. Blueprints for her next apology, I said. We burned it anyway. Some plans aren't worth revising. Now the morning sun slides through our kitchen and strikes that gold-seamed bowl, scattering light across unpainted walls. The cracks don't look like weakness anymore. They look like design. Maybe that's all resilience ever is, learning which fractures deserve gold. Because sometimes the most beautiful restorations aren't about erasing collapse. They're about loving the ruins you chose to keep. There's a moment right before sunset, when the brass fittings in our kitchen glow like they're lit from inside. The air goes honey thick, softening every edge. That's when I usually stop sanding or sketching and just look. The house creaks the way old buildings sigh low, content exhale. Somewhere upstairs, Ethan hums off-key while fitting curtain rods. I let him. Imperfection is the new luxury. Sometimes neighbors wander past, curious about the couple always covered in paint specks and laughter. They see the surface. 2 people renovating a house. What they don't see are the fault lines beneath the blueprints printed in lessons. The reinforcement written in patience. When I run my fingers along a repaired banister, I can feel every layer of primer we laid over scarred wood. It's smoother now, but never flat. The grain remembers. Maybe that's all love is, memory that doesn't hurt anymore. People ask if I ever design churches now. I do. But lately my sketches have more windows, more space for light to travel unbroken. Collapses taught me one truth. Structure should bend for grace. I still keep that gold-seamed bowl on the counter. Each morning it catches the first light before the coffee's ready, a quiet reminder that strength can shimmer. The cracks never close. And I'm grateful for that. They remind me where the pressure once was, where it finally gave, and where I didn't. Ethan laughs when I toast our reflection in that bowl. To gravity, I say, our most honest engineer. Because without it, nothing would settle, and we'd never learn what holds. The brass panel from the wedding too rescued, polished again, hangs above our new sink. When I catch my reflection now, I don't see a woman waiting to react. I see a builder measuring light, content with the blueprint she chose. So here's the final inspection note, written in gold dust. Perfection isn't the goal of restoration. Continuity is. Keep the story standing, seams showing, light running through the cracks. Because some designs deserve to age honest, and every ruin, given care, still hums with possibility. So, that's how a poisoned toast turned into an education in grace. How revenge quietly rebuilt itself into gold. If stories about power, patience, and poetic payback resonate with you, you're part of the same blueprint. Subscribe to Revenge Diary for more tales where ruins find their light again. And share this episode with the person who'll understand every cracked but shining line. Because every scar holds a story, and we've only just started reading them.